let's talk about solving with tables. Uh, so when we were solving with graphs, I told you guys you want to think about each side of the equation as its own function. And that's why I picked this problem, because you can visibly see that both sides are functions rather than one side just being a constant. So let's get going with this. So I'm going to treat this problem, this absolute value equation, as if I was looking at two functions. So my first function, let me call it f of x. F of x equals absolute value of 3x plus 8. And then plus 8. And then I'm going to think also about the linear function g of x equals 5x. So what I was saying in the previous video is that basically if you take f of x and g of x and you find where they intersect, then you have found the solution to this equation. And we'll actually get to see that right here. All right, so I'm going to say f of x equals absolute value of 3x plus 8 plus 8. And there's my function, f of x. You can see it in blue. And then I'm going to say g of x equals 5x. So there you see the function in green. And actually, the easiest thing to do is just to find the intersection. And there it is, 8 comma 40, which means the input 8 matches up with the output 40 for both functions. So that's the solution. So there's a review of graphing. What we're going to do right here, though, is we're going to see this numerically. If the answer is in the graph, then you have to be able to see it numerically as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a table. All right, and I'm just going to call this x. I'm going to take away, by default, it says x and x1. And I'm going to call this f of x, this column f of x. So I can say, for example, 0, it evaluates f of x for me at 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to go all the way to 10. Okay, so it does all those input outputs for me. Well, the cool thing about tables and Desmos is that you can add a third column. So I'm going to call that third column, guess what? G of x. And if you don't want to call them f of x or g of x and you just want to define the function, you just wanted to say, for example, 5x, you can do that as well. It's the same thing, really. All right, but I'm going to just call it g of x since I'm really working on my function notation. And then it's really about just inspecting the table. All right, so I'm going to look at my table and I'm going to try to see where my outputs match up. And sure enough, if you look at the row for 8, you see 8 output 40 for f of x and output 40 for g of x. So there you have it. The answer is, without a doubt, now that we've done it 3 different ways, x equals 8. All right, and why do we keep doing this problem? Well, really because as mathematicians, you want to be able to see other people's point of view, other people's perspective. So you want to be able to understand the person that can solve this algebraically, just like that. You need to be able to check your answers graphically, and you need to be able to think about this numerically with the table. So that's basically what we're saying with solving by tables. All right, so I'm going to go back and let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, about a couple minutes left. So I'm going to look at another one. Let's look at this quadratic. All right, so again, I'm going to think of my left side as a function. So I'm going to say f of x equals absolute value of x squared. And this is really neat just because, I mean, this will work really with any type of equation. All right, and I'm going to say g of x equals 7. All right, so here I see, once again, I see my two functions where they intersect. I see my solutions. All right, that's my 0. And I could zoom in some more. But I could also, once again, make a table. And I'm going to go to add a table. All right, I'm going to go ahead and say x. And we're going to say f of x and g of x. And let's go ahead and see how g of x automatically populates 7s. All right, let me check right here. One of my answers was -2. So let's say I have -5. Doesn't match up. -4 doesn't match up. So you got to consider the negatives as well. And then right there, you see whenever you look at the table at input -2, the outputs 7 and 7 matched up. So once again, a table and a graph, they go hand in hand. So now you know how to solve these equations algebraically. You know how to solve them by looking at the graphs, by looking at the left side and the right side as 2 separate functions. And you know how to solve with tables. Last thing I want to say, please make sure that you are not trying to solve these equations by just writing the equation in one cell and looking at the vertical line. That will work on Desmos.com, but it will not work on Desmos test version. So please make sure you're understanding the lesson.